Hi, my name is Kelly St. Clair, and I am part of the A4LE organization here. Myself and Corey are kind of running these town hall meetings and discussions. We're all just interested in talking to different people within the education sector to help us to understand what post-COVID-19 is going to potentially look like. And hopefully these conversations will help everyone to navigate that a little bit better and maybe be able to ask questions of each other and understand what's happening across the Commonwealth. So because we have a limited time and it always gets, all these panels that I've listened to, not necessarily moderated, it seems like there's always a lot of conversation that happens, and we've got only 30 minutes, so we'll just dive right in. We have Kerry Miller with us. Kerry, if you can raise your hand and say hello. He is with the Virginia Department of Education, and his title is the Associate Director of Pupil Transportation, so perfect. Then we have Shay Coates, right there. Newport News Public Schools, Director of Transportation. Eddie Walters, middle there. Montgomery County Public Schools, Director of Transportation. And then we have Francine Furby with, there you are, with the Fairfax County Public Schools as the Director Office of Transportation Services. So, I guess we just want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's happening in your counties and how it's impacting your world as it relates to COVID and transportation and what that looks like. So I guess we'll start with Eddie, perhaps, and ask what your new program looks like, if you've already adopted anything. I think you mentioned offline that you've started to work towards an actual schedule.
Yeah, so our board has already voted. We presented them with a couple of options to start with. And the first was transportation options. So we gave them options of, being social distancing, 6 feet, students separated 6 feet apart on each bus, which would limit our seating capacity to about 13 roughly students for a 77 passenger bus. Then we also gave them another option using mitigation and having students wear a mask and having 1 student per seat. So doubling our capacity to 25, 26 students. So they voted on that one. So that's what we're going to do. We're in Southwest Virginia, so we're seeing lower numbers as far as exposure and things like that. So then they had a couple of options, scheduling options to choose from. And what it looks like we're going to go with is an option where we give this every student a chance to come to school 4 days a week. So we're looking at Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday going to school. And we're doing basically like a A-B schedule. So there'll be students in the morning, and then there'll be different students in the afternoon. So we're going to be running, 2 sets of routes. We'll be running morning routes and then a midday route, allowing our student population, if they choose to come to school, each day. Now it's only for a few hours each day, but nonetheless being able to come to school each day.
Hey Eddie, what grades are impacted there? What are you going to do?
We're doing pre-K through 12.
Oh, really? Okay, wow.
Yeah. We're doing secondary and elementary. So that's what we're looking at. As you know,
can you give everyone an idea of how large your school division is?
We're about 10,000 students. Is our student population. We're about 450 square miles. We have 4 high schools, 4 middle schools, and I believe 11 elementary schools. So yeah, that's what, and of course we're a tiered schedule. So we do our secondary right in together and elementary right in together.
Shay, what is happening in your area? And that's a great, thank you, Kerry. That's a good segue as far as the capacity of students, what your population looks like. That's kind of a good way to.
Yes, and Newport News, we've been trying to work on the program for our summer school, looking at summer school right now with a couple programs targeting some of our vulnerable students. And then with regards to the 2021 school year, we just started, there've been some planning going on, but we really starting to get into what the 4 different scenarios that they kind of lay out in the state plan that, they kind of put it out there, what we can do for support for that. So there's several meetings over the next couple of days with regards to that and getting the, how can we, as a transport, how can we support the plan that they have forward for us? So we're at the beginning stages of that. I just had a pretty long meeting with my folks right now, looking at the different scenarios and how we can support that with regards to social distancing. We did look at the Montgomery County when I saw the article that came out and kind of sparked my interest when they were looking at when their decision to put 22 to 23 basic student on every seat. We kind of brought that to our lawyer at our district to look at it as for us and what kind of liability we have. So that's one of the options also. And then, of course, the first option for us is probably like 12 students per bus. And on our special needs, we're looking at 10 per bus. And then there might be a need based on the students that we have to have an assistant on that bus also to help the bus driver, because when you're looking at doing double loads for some of the schools, we have to look into who's cleaning the bus in between the runs to help the driver when they go back out to pick up additional students. So that's a sort of a problem when you only have 95 bus assistants assigned to your district and you have 340 buses. So we kind of look at what can we do in that area, multi-purpose and maybe teacher assistants to help us out to become bus assistants.
We're going to have assistance on every one of our routes. That's the plan if we move forward with this plan.
Eddie and Shay, were there any discussions on temperature checks at the bus level, or would that be done at the school facility level?
I don't know exactly what the plan is. I think I've heard that it's going to happen at the school level once they arrive to school, but I don't think that we've gotten that far yet.
Okay, we've asked for that to be done at the school. Just being in our area where we are in the urban area, in the traffic that we have, where we pick up some of the kids on the busy roads, trying to do temperature checks and get students on the buses probably not ideal. So I think they're looking at trying to do those at the school themselves.
Shay, would you be looking at a targeted group to go back, like K through 5, K through 3, or since Newport News is a little larger than Montgomery?
Yeah, because we transport about 24,000 kids, and okay. Looking right now, from what I understand, Kerry, and it's between pre-K and third. That's pretty much the population they really want. If it came to it, that's the target. The population they really want to target is a pre-K through third grade. And right now, we just ordered enough Chromebooks for our middle school, so all our middle school students. So basically, by the end of the summer, we'll have all our 6th through 12th grade with one-to-one devices. So if we had to stay at home, they will be able to do that for them. So I know the one target, if we had to take any kids to school, would be pre-K through third grade.
Okay. And so not the last year, Francine.
Mm-hmm.
How is it in Fairfax, and what population do you serve as far as the size of your county?
Right. So we have about 180,000 students, and we transport about 140,000 And we transport those students over about 1,192 buses daily. So the presentation that we provided our school board on Monday was 3 options for return to school in September. And over the summer, our summer programs are virtual. But for the fall, we're looking at all virtual learning for all students, or as students return, they'll return with social distancing. And we are looking at models of 25% and 50% of the student population. And with that, we know that our buses will be social distance at 1 per seat. We looked at social distancing to the greatest extent possible, and to do that with the capacity loss, we feel that assigning 1 student per seat with PPE, face masks for all students would work for us, and that's what we presented. Students would be required to wear a face mask. They would be encouraged and reminded to wear a face mask. We also looked at the temperature gauge, but that was something that was decided at senior leadership, and we were guided by our health department that because the temperatures weren't 100% indicators that a student had the virus, that that would be done more on a school level versus at the school bus level. And so we are providing PPE for students that forget their mask. We're providing PPE for our bus driver in the form of a face shield, as well as for our attendant. And so we are requiring drivers and attendants to clean periodically throughout the day at the end of each route. So that, and we're also allowing or providing them time to clean, at the end of the day as well. We're actually adjusting our schedule to allow for social distancing once we get to the school. We know typically we could have anywhere from 5, 10, 15, 20, up to 40 buses serving a school. And so with social distancing, with 23 to 26 students on a bus, we want to make sure that once we unload those students, there's ample time to schedule those buses in to allow for social distancing on the school campuses, and even at the end of the day when we're receiving them back. And so we did have to adjust our schedule, about 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon, which does require additional time for our drivers and attendants. And so we had to factor that in. And then the third scenario that we presented to the school board was a combination of face-to-face learning in addition to social or virtual learning for students and staff that weren't able to make it into the building. So we are having town halls, sharing this out with staff in the community. As I said, we presented to our school board on Monday. We're having a work session on Thursday, tomorrow, to address some of the questions that the school board had for us on Monday. And we will also be speaking with the school board again next week. We had submitted several surveys to parents, trying to gather information as far as how many of the students they expect to return, and then we're also going to be doing a survey for transportation as well.
How is that, the surveys to the parents to know who will be returning? How has that played out?
Well, we received a large number of participants, and that deadline is Friday.
Okay.
But as of yesterday, we had received thousands of responses, and so I think it's being received very well.
And are most of the responses that they are sending their students back to school, or have you seen?
We haven't been able to scrub the results. We just are tallying how many folks have received it and are completing it.
And how did-
Francine, I don't know if I missed it, but are you using a targeted group of students also, like K through 3, or are you looking at the whole population?
We were looking at K through 12 for the 50% and 25%. And we were asked to look at, once we got guidance from the state, the special needs and pre-K through 3rd grade, but the focus has been on K through 12.
Any discussion on aids on your general route buses?
Age, we have.
Aids.
Oh, assistance.
Assistance.
Yeah, not on the general ed routes. We are placing assistance on our special needs routes. And we're still allowing drivers to bring their preschool age children as well.
Is everyone on the panel requiring school bus drivers to wear PPE?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone that will be on our bus will be required to wear PPE. Students, the assistants, and the driver.
Was there discussion, Eddie, on smaller children using PPE and parental guidance for that, or?
Yes, there was. Again, we're doing a survey as well, to parents about transportation, about scheduling and things like that, which we haven't gotten all the data back yet. But I think that there was something about that in there, but we're pretty steadfast that if you're going to ride the bus, we need you to wear a mask on the bus. So if parents are choosing not to, then they have the option to transport their student. So we're requiring that if you ride the bus, you wear a mask.
How does this impact budgeting for, that's a big question, I guess, for each of you? And I guess we can just start with, we'll go the opposite direction. Francine?
So, like I said, with the additional time that we are providing our drivers in attendance, we had factored in an annual increase of close to $14 million. That's with driver's time, attendant time, as well as the additional PPE. So it is an impact on our budget. But when you look at that and compare it to the number of buses that would be required if we had to social distance further, that's a smaller number compared to having to add a number of buses. And we looked at some scenarios which would require us to add over 700 buses in some cases. So we feel that with adjusting the routes and being able to receive students at a reduced percentage, 50%, 25% would be ideal. But I think that we will be leaning more towards the 50%. Fortunately, we are able to manage that without the addition of buses to our fleet.
Gotcha. And Shay? You're just dialing into it now, so maybe you don't know the implications.
Yeah, but when you look at it, because the way we'll be, when we start school, we know we'll be reducing, there'll be no field trips, things that were cost factors for our district where, our drivers, they get 32.5 guaranteed hours a week now. And we start looking into, and I'm budgeted for overtime and over contract, but I think some reduction in some other areas where we were spending a lot of money on field trips and midday shuttles, things that will probably be cut out during this time frame until we come out of this, whatever phase we'll be in, phase 3. I think it might balance itself out when it comes to that. We'll be able to reduce costs in those areas to make up for the hours that we probably have to do for extended hours for the drivers during the week.
sense. And Eddie?
Yeah, we're thinking along the same lines as Shay. You know, we're looking at 4 days a week, the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So they wouldn't be working on Wednesdays. And with the reduction in our midday runs, our vocational things like that, and field trips, we're thinking that it may offset these additional hours and runs that we're having to do to split the school in half, doing 50 and 50. So that's what we're hoping.
Kerry, from a state level, you were asking some great questions of our panel. What additional things would you like to say?
As far as budgeting?
Budgeting, yes. Mm-hmm.
I know there's going to be some of the excess money available for the pandemic needs, and I'm not quite sure if it's going to be in a grant type process or just distributed as part of the normal budgeting process. But I'll have to check into that a little more. But I know there are going to be funds available to help with excess costs, to comply with all the extra, pretty much the extra recommendations, to keep everyone safe. So we'll just have to wait and see how much is available.
Gotcha. I think we put on, in general, I didn't say this from the beginning, but if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask, I don't know if you have had an opportunity to put any of those questions into the chat. We're happy to answer any of those questions for you, or they are happy to answer any of these questions. Please feel free to speak up or chat, put your question in the chat room. Trying to think of some other things. You mentioned something about the bus cleaning, which I feel like a lot of the questions that I had, you've kind of covered in your overall scope and discussion. Trying to think of what other.
We are going to publish some cleaning best practices and recommendations under our FAQ site, and that should be coming up in the next day or two. As far as a lot of really CDC recommendations for bus sanitation. So.
Okay.
There's a question about planning to handle countywide programs. Has that come up in discussions about how planning other countywide programs that have typically gone to with buses?
Or were you saying, I guess Eddie and Shay, you guys are both saying that some of those things are going to be removed. But is there some additional programs that have to be considered? And Francine, I guess we one at a time, whoever wants to go first.
Well, in the scenario that we're looking at, 50% or 25% of all levels, we are anticipating the ability to continue with our midday shuttles for academy programs, knowing that there will be an adjustment in their schedule. But we do anticipate being able to provide those midday shuttles, and and I'm not sure that our schools, especially elementary level, will be in support of doing any after-school programs. With our bell change, we are dismissing our latest elementary a little later. Typically, they're dismissing at about 4:10, and with this bell adjustment, it'll be at 5:45. Or I'm sorry, 4:50. We looked at one at 5:45, but it'll be 4:50. So it will be a little later. Again, that will allow for the sanitizing measures and the social distancing. But yeah, some of those programs throughout the middle of the day, we do anticipate going. And that's too dependent on, our driver availability. We're messaging that out as well. We are looking at a daily shortage of about 80 drivers. And we've received about 25 additional retirement notices where drivers will not be returning in the fall. And we know that we have over 265 drivers that are over the age of 65, and that number is huge. And if drivers decide that it's too much of a risk to come back, that'll be a huge impact on the level of service that we'll be able to provide.
Francine, you bring up a good piece, especially with the drivers. And then we just had a discussion about the drivers, and then, like you said, you're already short to begin with, and then you factor in absenteeism that comes in to the profession. And we're short 30 drivers, and we talked about the DMV right now. How do you go about training people? You got new drivers coming, but you can't get them scheduled to even get a permit test to begin with. So that's a big challenge if, especially if a district wants you to do a little bit more with the drivers. That's some of the things we face is, between the drivers for their testing, for the permits, not being able to get a DMV. There's no special backdoor for school districts for that to help them get through the process. And then you look at when you get buses, if you get new buses, your tags and getting your tags for your buses. So that's a big dilemma for us. We can have all the applicants that we want, trainees. It's just trying to get them through there in time when school starts.
Hey, Marvin, so Shay, we have talked to DMV about that, and they're opening up more availability the week of June 29th.
Good to know.
Yeah. So, and they also recommended try entering for spaces every day, because sometimes things open up. So I recommend, the week of the 29th, keep trying to get people in.
Okay.
And you might want to, if you have contacts at your local area, see if they're willing to send out a mobile unit to your area if you have a bunch of people, because that has been done already.
Kerry, we're talking about DMV and Newport News, okay?
Well, it's really DMV anywhere. I know what you're saying, Shay.
Good suggestion, though. Good suggestion.
So
I wonder also with the, if you're trying to hire, like you mentioned too, and with the unemployment situation in the world or in our nation, I know we've had a lot of people in the different sectors not want to go back to work because unemployment has been beneficial to them. Are you seeing any of that as well? Too soon to tell?
Yeah, I think it's too soon to tell. We've been doing, I got 50 drivers that have been working since March doing mobile feeding. So we'll continue to do that all summer. And we recently had our drivers come back last week to pick up their contracts. And I think there's only 9 people that left to have to turn in their contracts. So pretty much everybody was here last year. Right now, a couple of retirements are coming back. Still short drivers, but nobody who's doing the try to go the unemployment route.
Eddie?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's different or unique here, unfortunately. I mean, we face the same things. I mean, just on a smaller scale. We trying to get drivers trained for the upcoming school year, is difficult. First of all, just getting people to apply, but second, and being able to finish the training. Especially, part of the training is training with students on board. So if you got a new trainee, you can't complete their training until you start transporting students. So that's the thing that we're facing as well. So yeah, we're not unique.
Yeah, we had several inquiries for, unemployment, and we just encourage individuals to contact, Virginia Unemployment, Virginia Employment Agency, because every situation we know is unique. And we are continuing to look at recruitment options, working with our HR department, where, we do have some scheduled walk-ins to complete background checks and all, but really working with the unemployment offices to, provide flyers and just information that, we are still hiring, and we're looking at doing virtual job fairs so that we can let folks know that, we're very interested and we have positions available, and just having, staff ready to, conduct classes when available. We also heard from our training department with their concern to, comply with social distancing while they're, doing classes or while they're out observing, pre-trips and all. And so, we are supplying them with face shields so that they can have some type of, protection or barrier against those that they're working with. And so I think, even with our in-service, we're looking at doing our in-service virtually and planning to, incorporate a lot of our cleaning protocols and, bus loading protocols and student management with regard to PPE during the virtual in-service. So it's a lot of changes, but, we really have to factor in, every detail, even down to our route selection process, what that's going to look like and the changes that must happen, to comply with social distancing. So it's just changing our whole world.
It's definitely.
There was a question in the chat box about hand sanitizer on school buses. We're pretty much following the TSA guidelines on that, and they've just adjusted that. I've gotten a lot of questions about mounting, a large sanitizer station in the school bus. That wouldn't meet FMVSS crash or flammability standards. And keep in mind, alcohol-based hand sanitizer could be an accelerant in a fire. So the TSA guidelines have been adjusted. It used to be like a 3-ounce bottle, but they raised that up to 12 ounces of hand sanitizer now. So either if you distribute the smaller bottles or just use one larger bottle of not larger than 12 ounces would be okay on school buses.
Any other questions you saw, Kerry or Corey, that we should do before we close up?
There was one asking about any contingency plans. Has that been discussed? If for COVID cases that happen on the buses, has that been a topic of discussion in your meetings?
Anyone?
We've talked about that, the liability, you put the driver in the, we talked about when you do the temperature check, if we're doing temperature checks at the bus stop, does a driver, if a kid has a temperature, do you send that kid home? Or you get into those type of situations, especially if it's a first grader, a young kid. And then what happens when you do have a kid who maybe went to school, we found out had COVID, what does that do for everybody on that bus? The type of bit of our action is going to be. So I know our school nurse, our district nurse, she's working through some protocol issues for us to help us out in that area, basically from the bus stop all the way to the school, what actions we should be taking.
It's the same for us. We're still working on protocols right now on the what if scenarios and what we need to do. But again, we're working with our local health department, school nurses, things like that, to come up with our best plan.
Yeah, we're looking at like a health screening form that the parent would have to complete on that child. And we're looking at a way in which, that can be done on a daily basis, whether it be through, a lanyard or, some type of document or device that would allow the school to have that information on file in a very simplistic manner. You know, otherwise, you know, if a student does get sick at school, you know, the school will follow those protocols, but there are no protocols at this point that we've discussed for our driver to be responsible for identifying or following through with any action if a student boards the bus that is sick.
Okay, Kerry, do you have any last words before we close up? Because I know we've exceeded a little bit of our 30-minute time.
No, just stay tuned for further guidance. You know, everything's really flux, and as we move into phase 3, there might be some more adjustments to everything. So stay safe, everyone, and thanks for everything you're doing. So I know it's really tough right now, and it's going to be a big challenge for us coming up in the fall, but we'll get through it and be better off for it.
Thank you all for joining us today and helping us to see your part of this puzzle. I hope you are able, anybody that's on here, please feel free to join us for every week on Wednesdays, noon to 12:30-ish. We're going to have conversations that are pertinent to COVID-19 and the return to school. So feel free to join us for those as well. Hybrid teaching and learning, and there's a variety of different topics. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank